So, welcome to Photoshop in 3 days, part of Morley College Learning. Hi, I'm Philippe. So, I'm going to start this little video by just talking about the very basics of Photoshop, just getting around, just learning a little bit about how to navigate in Photoshop. So, firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by making a new document. So I'm going to go File, New, and that's it. I'm going to say OK, but before I do that, I want to draw your attention to a few numbers here. So it might look like centimeters. Quite often there's centimeters involved in our description of our document. And this dialog box might look slightly different, but the important thing is that you have these numbers. So this one says 16 by 16, yours might say something else. So that's how big the image is. And the resolution, this says 300 pixels per inch. So that's how many dots there are, individual little dots there are in an inch. So if I instead go to pixels here, this is a much more useful way of knowing how big the image is. Especially from working with images off the internet, you'll be able to see how many individual squares there are across by how many there are high. So just check that out. And another good number to know is that 300 pixels per inch is generally pretty good if you're wanting to print a photograph at the end of the day. So if your image is 16 centimeters and your resolution is 300, then it's going to be a fairly good photographic image. So that's all we need to know. I'm just going to say OK. Got a beautiful blank document, and we're going to show you what Photoshop looks like. So firstly, what we've got down here on the left hand side are a bunch of tools. So there are lots. We're going to talk about a few of these over the course of these videos. The first one is the moving around tool. This one's called the movement tool. And then I'm going to show you this one. This is kind of the brush tool. I'm going to click on the brush tool, and then I'm going to draw my name. I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to draw my name, I'm going to say hello. Hello there. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to try and dispel some of the myths of Photoshop. Basically, if you remember Microsoft Paint from back in the olden days, it's kind of like that, only much more complicated. So if I show you what Microsoft Painty things there are, then we've got a starting point. So I've said hello. I'm going to draw a little smiley face. Oh, make sure that I filled in so there's no gaps. Great. Hooray! So I said hello there. So that's the first tool we're going to use. I'm going to change the color of my brush. So if I go down here, you can see down at the bottom of the tools there are two squares. One is black, one is white, and the top one's the most important. This is the foreground color. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to change it to, well, here's the tone. So it's how grey or how saturated the color is, how strong the color is. And then this is my rainbow of colors down the side. So I'm going to choose a nice green, a nice fluorescent green. Can you see that here? The bottom square, this is what it was, and this is what I'm changing it to. So I just say OK. So now I can draw something else. So maybe I'll just draw a four-leaf clover. There we go. That's the sort of thing that we'll draw if it's green. Beautiful. Now, what else do we normally do in Microsoft Paint? I'm going to fill in using a paint bucket. Now, can you see in these tools, there are little diagonal little triangles in the bottom right corner of them. What that means is there are tools underneath those tools. So if I hold down on this tool, then you can see that there are tools underneath it. So that's what I'm going to do. This gradient tool, I'm going to hold down and I'm going to select the paint bucket. Brilliant. I'm going to change my color to yellow. Obviously, that's the color of a smiley face. I'm going to, there we go, I'm going to select my smiley face. And I've colored him or her in. Marvelous. So, I'm going to now show you that the top bit of here, this is called the options panel. This changes depending on what tool you're on. So at the moment I'm on Paint Bucket. Can you see it's saying paint the foreground color? That was the yellow there. If I wanted to change it, I can do that. If I go back to the brush, can you see all of these options change? So this is my brush tool, and it shows me brush things. So next to where it says 13, there's a little arrow, and that shows me I can change the size of my brush. So there we go. So I've increased the brush size, and yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. Don't want that. I can also change how soft or how hard the brush is. So that's a very hard brush. Okay. Just by the way, if you want to undo something, it's Edit, Undo, or Step Backwards, or it's Command Z. Yeah, so that looks like, let me just make a beautiful brush to tell you what that looks like. That looks like this key, that's the Command key, and then this is the Z. Yeah, so Command Z is undo. Everything you need to know about everything is worth nothing unless you know that shortcut key. Brilliant. So we've done brushes, we've done looking at the toolbar, we've looked at the options bar up here. I'm going to look over here now. This is your layers. This is a super important area. So if I create a new layer, here we go, here's the new layer icon. It's next to the thing that looks like a rubbish bin. Here's the new layer. What that does is it creates a page on top of this. This means that I can move the object around on top and I've not destroyed what's underneath it. So I'm going to get a nice yellow color. I'm going to make my brush size, so I've gone to the brush, make my brush size nice and big. I'm going to make a beautiful sun like this. Hooray! Marvelous. Now because I'm on this layer, I can go to the movement tool at the top and I can drag it around. This means that it's floating on top, almost like there's a bit of perspex on top of the bit of paper that we've got. We can have lots and lots of layers. So lots of layers, which means lots of bits of perspex, one on top of the other. And that's the basic interface. Right, so let's save that. So I'm going to say File, Save. And if I save it, I'm going to call this Drawing 1. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Notice that it says PSD. This is the Photoshop file type. And this is important because if you save it as a PSD, it will save all of your layers. You can go back to your document and carry on where you left off. Okay, so that's enough for today, for this video, and I'll see you in the next video.